little something for the ladies. Now, I'm also available on alternative social media on MeWe, James Desborough, all one word, on Minds, Grimachu. I'm no longer on Gab. I've deleted my account because it's even more exhausting than Twitter. Oi. There's a lot of talk about removing statues, and not just statues, monuments, the names of streets and buildings and halls and charitable trusts and you name it, because the people who founded these things, at least a couple of centuries ago for the most part, were not the best of people, were involved in slavery or other atrocities, and there are modern monuments and statues to people who've been involved in what we would now think of as atrocities and horrible things as well. As a historian, albeit an amateur one, I'm deeply concerned about losing the past, about forgetting the past, forgetting what has gone before. And as a free expression advocate and a creator myself, I'm also concerned about the erasure or censure of art, even horrible art depicting or made by horrible people. I mean, Hitler's watercolours aren't particularly good, right? But I wouldn't advocate burning them. So the pulling down of statues, as seems to be happening and accelerating, does concern me for numerous reasons. And I think there's a hypocrisy at the centre of this. The exact same people who want us to change teaching curricula and so on to better emphasise the role of the British Empire, in our case, in slavery and imperialism and all the bad sides of that, the mostly bad sides of that, that I can agree with. I can certainly see why that would need to be done, though in practice we don't teach much of that period of history anyway. In schools it's mostly World War I, World War II, Cold War, and that's pretty much it. Maybe the preamble with the 19th century revolutions, but not a lot more than that. But those same people who want us to shift the curriculum to emphasise these things are the same people that want us to tear down these statues and rename everything. So on the one hand, they want us to remember the past, on the other hand, they want us to forget the past, and that these two are not reconcilable. Leave them up, recontextualise them, and change the teaching curricula to include more of the bad elements, the unvarnished truth, sure. But tearing down these things is dangerous. I think in 50 years or so we might regret it, for the worst reasons. The incident grabbing people's attention at the moment is Colston in Bristol, which is a very right-on sort of city at the best of times. And Colston was a slave transporter, not a slaver per se, to get around laws against slavery that Britain had put into place. So there's absolutely no denying the fact that the man was an enormous cunt for everything that he did. I mean, they lost 20% of the slaves that they were transporting, and it wasn't exactly a wonderful life at the end of the journey. We won't get into the whole everything surrounding slavery. It's sufficient here to just acknowledge that slavery is bad, and he was involved in it. But it's not that simple. Colston was an enormous philanthropist. The fortune that he amassed, he spent a huge amount on almshouses for the poor, education for children, which wasn't yet a mandated thing. He gave huge amounts of money to churches, charitable groups, all kinds of stuff. He was a massive philanthropist. That's why so much is named after him. That's why there's a statue up to him. It's got nothing directly to do with him being a slaver. It's not like that's what he's being celebrated for. But it's not that simple, because people have been campaigning through proper channels to have the statue taken down or amended for a very long time, and they've been blocked by the local council, the Conservative councillors in particular, because Colston was also a very active Conservative. And they tried to just change it to have a plaque on it, talking about the bad side of who he was and what he did, and that was rebuffed. But it's not that simple. They took it into their own hands to tear it down. They did it unsafely. They tossed it into the harbour, which is dangerous for ships and so on. It's not simple. It's not easy. And this is a case that should be pretty clear cut in that he was a slaver. Okay, what about Auschwitz? We keep and we maintain Auschwitz as a monument to the dead. Yet this is a genuine, actual horrific place, not a statue or a standalone monument to what happened. It's the place where people were actually killed. And we didn't keep and maintain many of the other death camps or concentration camps. And this certainly seems to make it easier for Holocaust deniers to find a way out of admitting what happened. As I've banged on about endlessly, because I'm proud of him for it, my grandfather was amongst those to liberate Belsen-Bergen. And they knocked it down and incinerated it, in part because they were so disgusted by what they found there, also for medical reasons. But that may have been a mistake, because if we had kept it and maintained it and investigated it, we may have found more in the way of records and evidence of the kinds of horrors that were being inflicted there. Most people, I think, particularly the people most affected, would say that we should keep Auschwitz as a testament and a monument to man's inhumanity to man. But even that is insufficient to stop some people denying the whole thing ever happened, or was as bad as it was. So perhaps we should have kept the rest as well. Auschwitz is definitely an educational opportunity. So what about Karl Marx? Now, Marx never directly hurt anybody, but his theories, his ideas, his observations went on to create a political ideology whose misapplication led to the deaths of millions, either deliberately through pogroms and cleansing drives, sweeping a broom through the ranks, or through abject incompetence. Now, Marx's grave is frequently a target for vandalism, and people shit and piss on it, and I can't really complain because I'd love to do that to Thatcher's grave. Yeah, it costs a lot to maintain and repair and protect Marx's grave. And this is, as I said, a man whose political philosophy has, at least indirectly, been responsible for millions of deaths. So should we take Marx's grave marker down in respect of that? Tricky, innit? Alright, what about Winston? Led us through World War II, responsible in no small part for our dogged determination to stand even alone against Hitler. A man who exemplified the national character of the time, a stubborn bullishness. He was a living embodiment of the British bulldog, basically. But he also put people in concentration camps. He was also an enormous racist and a supporter of empire. There's a lot of nastiness in Winston's background that cannot be papered over with his wit, or the things that he did for us during the war, or just the fact that he happened to be leader during the war. So where does that tip the scales? Is it enough to stand against a genuine fascist regime and help defeat it? Or is that outweighed by his own personal racism and issues and the horrible things that he did as a younger man and the things he did in the military and so forth? Where's the balance? Is there a balance? Does someone have to be completely pure as snow in order to pass muster and be allowed to have a statue of them? It's not so easy, is it? And plus, most people don't know the depths of history around any of these things. So you smash up a statue of Churchill because of the concentration camps or the racism, they see you smashing a statue of a war hero and react accordingly. it's not an easy thing to navigate. So what's the solution? Is there a solution? Some people suggest taking them down and putting them in a museum. The museums don't want them, and who would go to the Museum of Historical Bastards? In any case, unless you made it more entertaining, like Madame Tussauds or something, and then you'd probably be even more accused of glorifying horrendous people from the past. It's not that easy. Tear them all down? Like I say, I think we're going to regret that for the worst possible reasons in perhaps 50 years or so. I mean, consider that the Soviet Union hasn't existed since the early 90s. And the monuments that were preserved, that weren't torn down, ended up put into a park, out of the way, out of sight almost. And it's largely tourists that visit that. And look at Russia. It's an authoritarian hellhole again, after a brief flirtation with democracy and modernisation. They could probably do with remembering their nasty authoritarian past a bit more and being reminded of it a bit more. A lot more of those statues should be in situ, probably. Even the Germans retain some monuments and many buildings that the Nazis erected during their tenure, and put them to good purpose. It's not simple, it's not easy. And many of these people that we decry as slavers and whatever else, they're important historically anyway, in spite of that. Or they spent their wealth in ways that we might consider progressive, such as helping poor people and spreading education amongst kids. It's not just one thing, there's always more to it. Heroes have feet of clay. Villains have lighter sides, even the worst of them. I think plaques, recontextualising the statues is probably the way to go. I think if we destroy them, we'll regret it. Some artefacts from the American Civil War have been lost during this latest conflagration. I think we'll live to regret that as well. Because we have to understand history, or it'll happen again. Zang.
The Atomic Age, with its A-bombs, transistorized radios, jet engines, and a new breed of dangerous supervillain, requires heroes to face the challenge. That's where you come in. The world needs you, Agent. Agent of Swing.
The gallows is cold and the gibbet is lonely. We'll make things hot for you here. The gallows is cold and the gibbet is lonely. We'll make things hot for you, Joni, my dear.